It's 4 o'clock on a Monday, and you know what that means, don't you? It's time for another exciting episode of TAXITV Live. Yeah, baby. And I am thrilled to have a great guest on today's show, Mr. Michael Eames.
Thanks for having me.
I'm glad to have you here. Michael is a longtime friend of mine, but he's a friend of many people in the music industry. Very well known, very well respected. And he's here today to talk about the Mechanical Licensing Collective, which I stupidly didn't catch my own typo in the email that went out where I called it the Music Licensing Collective, which is a whole other thing. This is the Mechanical Licensing Collective. But first, a little background on Michael. Actually, let me double check and make sure we're broadcasting. That's always good to do.
Okay.
And there we are. We are good. All right.
Fantastic.
Anyway, Michael served along with 4 other independent music publishers and 5 songwriters on the Unclaimed Royalties Oversight Committee of the Mechanical Licensing Collective. That will commence blanket licensing of digital services, mechanical licensing of digital service. It started in January 1st, 2021. But Michael owns Penn Music Publishing. Before that, he oversaw the international activities and film and TV department of Don Williams Music Group, where he was responsible for song catalogs such as Jimi Hendrix, Chicago, and Roy Orbison, amongst numerous others. He also previously worked for Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys and the management and music supervision firms of the Derek Power Company and Seth Kaplan Entertainment. He also served as the national president of the Association of Independent Music Publishers. You guys probably know it as AIMP from 2015 to 2018, and served as the national vice president from 2013 to 2014. He's been on the Independent Music Publishers Advisory Council, the National Music Publishers Association, NNPA, also very active member of the California Copyright Conference and National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences, better known as NARAS. Wrote the music publishing section of the Hal Leonard / Roman and Littlefield published book entitled 5-Star Music Makeover, which he did with our good friend Bobby Borg. And grab that book.
Yep, absolutely.
And that book, there's a little bleed through from the green screen.
Oh.
Anyway, he co-wrote this book, which we're going to give away this actual signed copy today later in the show. You know what I forgot to do? I forgot to set up the pop up the chat room so I can see everybody. So pop out the chat. There we go. Anyway, as you can tell, Michael Eames is the real deal and knows wherever he speaks. And I always tell him, I know he gets embarrassed when I say this, but he is more articulate on just about any subject in the music industry, particularly anything that has to do with publishing or royalties, than anybody I know. And I've got at least 3 friends that are music attorneys, and somehow Michael just articulates even better than they do. Even though they're fine, he rises above. So
you are too kind.
Well, you impressed the. You impress me. I almost swore on
back
the show.
at you. I
you.
love that you do this TAXITV, and I feel passionate about today's subject. So
you do.
I think it's great that you do this every Monday, and we're doing it today.
Well, I'm glad to have you here. And people come up to me all the time. Not come up to me, but they'll ask me in emails, they ask me at the road rally, they ask me informally, when I'm out in the world, what is the MLC? I've heard you speak of it before. They also ask about Sound Exchange and a bevy of others, because there's so many of these things that help you guys get paid, and people really don't understand them. And it's complex. I admit, I consider myself relatively intelligent in that I made it all the way from kindergarten till the last day of college, barely. And I'm confused by all this stuff, and I'm surrounded by it all the time. But the MLC in particular has a problem in that it's got a lot of money, and a lot of that money may be your money sitting in a bank account. So I really wanted Michael to simplify it. I don't want to use the phrase dumb it down, but for my sake, dumb it down and explain what the MLC is, and then we'll get further into it.
Yeah, no, totally. So I think in order to understand what the MLC is, why it exists, we'll do a brief historical overview.
Okay.
Right? So as we talk about, so the book, I was holding up earlier that we're going to auction off.
No, we're not. We're giving it away.
Or raffling it off. Sorry, we're not
let's
auctioning.
auction it off.
Giving it away, whatever we're
Price
doing.
goes
No
to
money is involved. We're donating the book. Let's be clear.
Okay.
But no, it was a passion project of Bobby Borg's and mine, and Bobby's idea first, and came to me. It was ended up being our pandemic project, because why I love why we're doing today is because we feel passionately that all of the independent artists and musicians, it is so hard to make a living in the music business these days that you need to know, whether you end up doing the work yourself or not, you need to know how all the money is earned. So, one of the things that Bobby is so great at is taking complex topics and distilling it down into basic language that anyone can understand. And that's why he's been as successful as he has. And that was our challenge with this book. So to dive into the Mechanical Licensing Collective, I just want to first point out that there are 4 basic food groups, as we like to call it in the book, of music publishing. Right. So, and we're only talking about one of them today, which is mechanicals.
Right, which everybody thinks went away when records quit getting stamped, or largely, but
you're absolutely
wrong.
Right. Yeah. So it's mechanicals, performance, sync, and print. Right. Those are the 4 basic groups. But let's talk about mechanicals. As you said, a mechanical, we used to think of a mechanical of it came about because of a mechanical reproduction of a piece of work, a CD, a cassette, vinyl, whatever. And in Europe, they call it a reproduction right. So anytime there was a copy made or a reproduction, it generated a royalty. So now we've moved into the streaming world, and there's 2 types of streaming that I think everyone needs to keep in mind. The first is non-interactive streaming, which is mainly SiriusXM and Pandora.
Right. It plays what it plays.
And we can, if we have time, we'll get into Sound Exchange, because you mentioned that. We'll get into that at the end.
Okay.
But the non-interactive streaming is anything that looks and feels like radio. You are not in charge of in what order in which you listen to the songs.
Right.
But
you can pick a station, but not the order or the songs.
So, but then with interactive streaming, that's what we're all used to. Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, Amazon, Pandora. Well, Pandora and SiriusXM are now the same company.
Right.
And they do have their own interactive streaming service, even though they also maintain their non-interactive streaming service.
Wow.
Right? So it gets a little confusing. But the interactive streaming services, where you can choose what to play and in what order, create your own playlists, and you can even go offline and, play things like in Spotify, you can take songs offline.
Yeah.
Well, when that's happening, you're making a copy. You're making a reproduction. It's just either on your device or it's on a server that is hosting that copy that is broadcasting it to you. So there's one
copy of it, but if 618,000 people are listening at the same time, it has actually made 618,000 copies because they all start at a different moment.
Correct.
Okay.
So the one, I should have made a distinction with the non-interactive streaming like SiriusXM and Pandora. For us as songwriters and publishers, there's only one type of royalty, and that's a performance. Okay. So another topic for another time. Make sure you're a member of a performing rights society here in the United States and register your songs.
They do so much sync work that they're pretty familiar with that, so that's good.
So with interactive streaming, those types of streams, when triggered, generate both a performance royalty and a mechanical royalty. So for intensive purposes for today, we're going to consider it 50-50. Generally, half that money is a performance, half is a mechanical these days.
So it's called a percanical?
Where did you have your little drum set where we could go ba-doom boom?
Let's see.
There we go. See, he would have it. The wonders of technology. So the performance piece of an interactive stream will continue to go through your PRO.
Right.
ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, whatever.
And is it always 50-50 split between those?
Technically, right now, with the last analysis that I'm remembering, I believe 45% of it is a performance and 55% is a mechanical.
Interesting.
Generally, but I think it's easier for our discussion purposes, assume half and half.
Okay.
So we can rely on our PROs for the performance piece, but prior to the MLC, now what's also, since you mentioned the physical bit, the CDs, right? When those were being manufactured years ago, it was the record label that was responsible to get the mechanical license and pay it, because they were the vehicle that manufactured. Vehicle's a bad choice to use when I'm here at Taxi, but they were the entity that authorized the reproduction, and therefore they were responsible for the payment of the royalties that come about from making a copy.
So if you and I were called Seals and Crofts and we just released a new record and the label knew that they could sell 500,000 copies, so they pressed up 500,000 copies, that label would pay Harry Fox for the mechanical, or who got paid for that?
The publisher got paid. It's a question of whether the publisher used the Harry Fox agency or not.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about Harry Fox in a second because they're directly related right now to the MLC.
Okay.
But it was essentially the publisher that got paid.
And
but,
it was only
more
on
importantly,
units sold, or was it on units manufactured?
That's a separate discussion. I don't want to confuse things.
Okay.
But the point is that the record label was responsible because they were the entity that made the copy.
Okay.
So now moving to streaming, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, etc., who are the streaming services, what changed in that dynamic was it was their technology and their servers that were making the copy. So they became responsible for payment of the mechanical, no longer the record label.
Okay.
So for those of us as publishers whose job it is to collect money from everywhere, we are receiving far less money than we ever have from the record label itself, unless it's a physical copy or it's a digital download like the iTunes downloads that still technically exist that are going to disappear soon. I'm sure of it. 99 cents, that generated a mechanical because it was a copy, and we got that from the label. But no more. We had to get it from the streaming service because they were the responsible party. So pre-mechanical licensing collective, what was a complete pain in the butt and was pure chaos is that each streaming service had to hire their own third-party vendor to figure out who to pay.
Yikes.
So now there were three major vendors that most everyone used, one of which was the Harry Fox agency, one of which was Music Reports, and the third of which was MediaNet, which essentially no longer exists.
I've never heard of them. Okay.
MediaNet used to be owned by SOCAN, the Canadian Performing Rights Society. They divested themselves of it. It's now owned by a company called Audible Magic, but I think essentially MediaNet has disappeared.
They divested themselves and invested in Labatt's beer and a hockey team. Sorry, Canadians.
That's okay. We love our Canadian neighbors.
We do.
Anyways, and then there were other smaller players also. But for us as publishers, and I think it's important that everyone that's listening, if you write a song, you are the publisher, right? Until you sign a piece of paper assigning rights over to someone else. When you create something, you are the owner, you are the publisher. So therefore, you have to take on the responsibilities that we're going to talk about today, because the publisher's job is to collect all money that gets generated from the song. So the thing that we had to do when there were all these multiple vendors is every publisher had to get all of their catalog's data to each of the vendors, and they then had to put the data in their own databases, right?
This already sounds intense.
Well, and this is why I wanted to provide a little bit of a backdrop. You all listening, I think since the majority of you release your own music, you'll be familiar with a code called the ISRC code, like International Standard Recording Code. It's essentially the social security number that gets assigned to a master recording as it goes out into the digital world. Well, what you may or may not know is that each song composition, which is then what's embodied on the recording, gets its own code called the ISWC, International Standard Work Code. And those are a little less prominent than everyone is really aware of, because it happens kind of in the background. But the only way that you can get paid in the digital world is all accounting in the digital world from streaming. All is about the ISRC. It is the most important piece of information.
I have a question. Who was the genius that came up with both of those acronyms for those that had three of the same letters just to make it more confusing?
Fair point. I don't know the answer. But the holy grail of the digital world is matching the ISRC to the ISWC. Once that match is made, then the service knows exactly which writer and publisher they need to pay because a link has been made.
So there's no room for error in making sure that happens.
Absolutely correct.
On the musician or the copyright holders.
And on the vendor's side or the streaming services side, right? Because for years and years, now let's just, for argument's sake, say that the vendor that Spotify used pre-MLC, let's say that I made sure they made the match between the recording and the song. Mm-hmm. So I got paid from Spotify. But let's say Apple Music used a different vendor, but they didn't make that match between the recording code and the song code, and I didn't get paid from Apple.
Why didn't
because they had a different vendor.
Just sloppiness
when you have multiple vendors with multiple databases and we provide our data to them, we are beholden to them to make sure that all of our data gets ingested properly into their database, because all of the payments they make were based on the data they had in their database.
See, to me, and I am not a genius on AI or blockchain, but fairly familiar in somewhat broad terms on both, this seems like a problem easily solved by
the MLC.
Well, so, the MLC should be using blockchain and AI eventually.
I know the general concepts of blockchain, and I don't feel I'm adequately educated to debate the pros and the cons of blockchain. A lot of people have been trying to solve problems with blockchain with, I think, varying success.
I don't know anything about anything, but I've got them fooled into thinking that I do. So just roll with it.
All right. Anyway, so the great thing about the MLC, so we all knew about this problem, and when things aren't getting matched, you're not getting paid. So everyone is getting frustrated that as the business was moving more and more towards streaming, oh my God, what are we going to do? So in October of 2018, there was a bill that, shockingly, in the drama that we are all constantly having with our government, right, between the Democrats and Republicans in House and the Senate, the thing that's great is that in October 2018, both the House and the Senate unanimously approved what was called the Music Modernization Act.
Right, so it was a bipartisan bill because
100%
they didn't understand it, so they just signed off on it to get it off
Maybe
their desk.
There's some aspect of that, but it was a proud moment in the music business that it was a unanimous thing. President Trump signed it into law, and one of the three things the MMA created was the MLC.
Okay.
So the idea of the MLC is that it is a one-stop shop for all of these things relating to data and everyone getting paid.
Now is time to don't talk about what you're having for dinner, but this is the really important part.
Yeah, sorry. The history went longer than I wanted, but
That's okay.
I thought it might be relevant. So, so now we're looking at January 1, 2021 was when the MLC opened its doors officially. Oh, right.
Yeah.
And of course, there was immense amounts of work that led up to that period of time, to January 1, 2021. And the MLC has now been in existence for 3.5 years.
Who decided what the MLC looked like as a business and who would head it up and who was part of it? I mean,
it's a good question. So when the MMA created the MLC, and it's overseen by the Copyright Office, there were vying groups that had applied to become the officially anointed organization that would take on the responsibility created in the MMA for the MLC. There were mainly two groups that were competing with each other, and the first group which, they call, essentially that's what we have now. They called themselves the MLC. They got officially anointed by Congress and the Copyright Office to be the group to oversee this. What's incredibly important for everyone to understand is that the cost of the MLC is borne 100% by the streaming services.
Okay, that's great.
So, remember, streaming services each employ their own separate vendor. So there was a lot of duplicate work going on amongst the vendors. Were happy with it because they were all getting paid, right, by their respective clients.
So did they get pushed out when the MLC?
Well, so the existing leadership of the MLC as we know it now was the group that was anointed with, yes, we have decided that we're going to give you guys the reins and run with it. Then we had already agreed that the streaming services, as part of the creation of the MLC, would fund it 100%. So all the money that we as songwriters and publishers get paid is 100% commission free. There's nothing that gets taken off the top.
As opposed to PROs that take a little something for
the
finding your
PROs
money
are covering their overhead off the top. And separate discussion about BMI's new existence and its for-profit and all of that. But it's important to know that any money coming out of the MLC is straight from the source and nothing being taken off the top, which is fabulous. So the
salaries of the staff of their
that
office building,
all being covered by the streaming services.
Wow.
And they have negotiated so the MLC is an organization and the streaming services negotiate what that budget is every year, and it's been going fine. Fantastic.
Great.
Right? So I think that's important to know. So then now let's talk about the Harry Fox Agency.
Okay.
So we've had multiple vendors before, pre-MLC. Then the existing vendors and
Just for people that may have come in late, multiple vendors before that did what?
Before the Mechanical Licensing Collective.
And what did those vendors do?
Those vendors helped each individual streaming service figure out who to pay.
The mechanicals.
The mechanicals from interactive streaming.
Right, because even during a stream, there's one file of She Loves You, but every time somebody presses play, it creates a new file. So that's a mechanical replication of that file. Therefore, somebody's got to track all that stuff and make sure people get paid.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So now the vendors all competed to be the organization to manage the database of the MLC. The Harry Fox Agency succeeded. Okay. So I'm sure a lot of people here know of Harry Fox, and it still very much exists. It's owned by SESAC, the Performing Rights Society, and they manage the MLC database right now. So whether that changes in the future is up for discussion, but I think, all in all, we've all found incredible success with what's happened with the MLC. So what has been fabulous for us, and I say us meaning songwriters and publishers, is in order for a streaming service to be taken care of by the MLC, their incentive is that they have agreed to a blanket license.
Okay, explain what that is.
When anyone, ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, those are collective licensing organizations. We, as rights holders, could go around and license all these things ourselves. Bars, restaurants, not movie theaters in the U.S., separate discussion, but, TV stations. But that's enormously difficult and cost prohibitive. So we collectivize together. We have this organization represent us collectively, and then they issue a license for all the repertoire that they represent. Okay. And that's what the Mechanical Licensing Collective does with the services. Okay, the services enter into a blanket license. The benefit they get is that we can't sue them.
Streaming services.
The streaming services, sorry. Streaming services, when they opt into the MLC's blanket license, their benefit is they know they won't get sued for copyright infringement.
Okay.
And then in exchange, when that deal was negotiated as part of the MMA, we also have an audit right for the services. We didn't have that before the MLC. So
Right.
a service could pay us, and how do we know that it's right and correct?
Everybody in the music business is honest.
Right. Thanks for reminding me. So we now have an audit right. They also are covering 100% of all the expenses.
That's great.
So, and for us, we have a one-stop shop so that, and instead of us or any songwriter publisher submitting their data to multiple vendors, we send it to one place for mechanicals in the States, the MLC.
Easy breezy.
And most importantly, when there's a match between that ISRC and the ISWC, as long as once that match is made, it applies to every single service that is using the MLC because it's one-stop shop, one vendor.
Wow.
Okay. So
it
these
sounds
are all,
complex,
these are all
but
the
it
good
actually
things.
simplifies.
These are all the good things. Now we get into the fun part. Your money, right?
This will be stunning to you, so you really need to pay attention.
Thank
Please.
you. So you might some of you might recall a headline from February of 2021 where part of the deal that was made with the individual streaming services, they were holding on to money on their books because there were publishers that they could not find.
Right.
You know, their
And they
vendor.
They couldn't just ingest that money and distribute it to their executives or whatever. They had to.
They could try, but
Yeah.
whatever. They
So
still
they just
still owed it,
Yeah.
right? So in order for them to get the benefit of the blanket license, we can't sue them for copyright infringement, and to save their money on having to employ multiple vendors and spending more money than they needed to, well, they got the benefit, or we all got, where am I going with this? So they were holding on to their money, but what they had to do was pay their money that they were holding over to the MLC so that the MLC could figure out where it needed to go. So there was a headline in February of 2021, any of you can Google it right now, and there was $426 million that was paid to the MLC for streams that took place prior to 2021.
How far back? All the way?
Since the beginning of streaming,
Okay.
that they could not find out who to pay the mechanical to.
Wow.
So that money has been at the MLC since February of 2021 in an interest-bearing account, while all of us participants in the ecosystem have been getting all of our data to the MLC to make sure everything is registered.
And how long does that money sit there? You mentioned before we went live that it might be up to something crazy like $1 billion. You don't know this for a fact, but you're
I'm going to ballpark it for the purposes of our discussion here today, is that the $426 million was because streaming exploded. Right? Most of that $426 million was, say, 2020, 2019, 2018, because streaming was just exploding in popularity. And then, of course, during the pandemic, it exploded as well because we're all sitting at home. So but ever since the MLC opened its doors in January of 2021, the services have to pay the MLC on a monthly basis for all the streams that they report took place during that month.
So even if it's the Michael Laskow band and we got 12 streams, that gets reported. Mm-hmm. We're insignificant in the big picture.
Well,
awesome band, by the way.
It is an awesome band. So what I want everyone to realize is that $426 million came in and has been at the MLC bearing interest for pre-2021 mechanical portion of streams.
Okay.
Then, starting in January 2021, up until now,
which is 3 years,
almost 3.5 years, every single month there has been additional money that is not being claimed.
Right, of course.
So $426 million as of February of 2021, and even just for round numbers, right? Just for the hell of it. And please don't hold me to this, and the MLC has a lot of data on their website, but let's just, for easy math, say it was $10 million a month.
Right.
Was being not claimed
So it's 120
then we
million.
are now 36. I'm going to keep this simple. We're in May, but I'm going to say, let's say April. That's 40 months.
Okay.
At $10 million a month is an additional $400 million on top of the 426.
Wow.
So you
Okay.
get the idea.
Yeah.
No one's going to hold me to these numbers, but it's a lot of money. Now, the thing to bear in mind is what I keep trying to impress upon everyone is this is just the United States. Think about all the other huge music markets outside the U.S.
Does the MLC...
MLC is
It's global?
No.
It's
MLC is just for the U.S.
Well, who's doing it in France, Germany,
So
Asia?
what exists around the rest of the world is in each country there is usually a performing rights society and a mechanical society. Sometimes they're the same society, sometimes they're different, depending on the country. So streams that happen in those countries are being processed by those local mechanical societies because they're streams that originate in those territories.
So I have a question. Do they then hold money in their accounts for people to come and claim it? Or does it filter if you're a U.S.-based and registered artist, composer, what have you, does that money ever make it from the foreign entities to the MLC?
It doesn't go to the MLC, never.
Okay.
But the Harry Fox Agency, if you are a member of the Harry Fox Agency, you can opt into having the Harry Fox Agency collect your international mechanicals. You can also go through, say, a song trust, or if you use CDBaby, they have a they used to call it CDBaby Pro. I think it's called CD Boost now. We'd have to check their website, but it has a new name. But that's powered by Song Trust. TuneCore has their own publishing administration, and maybe when we get to the end of this, we can dive into some of those deeper holes. But as you all will kind of see as we go along, there's a lot of rabbit holes we can go down. I'm happy to go down as many holes as Mr. Laskow here wants us to go down. But what I want to stress, and the reason why we were talking about these financial numbers, is that there is a lot of money out there that is not going where it needs to go. Okay. Now, what is direly important, and I bring out this stat, it's an older stat, but you'll get the idea, which is my committee, we've wanted to get as much information about everything that's going on as possible. But one thing that totally blew our mind about a year ago is that there are tens of millions of dollars that are sitting at the MLC to be claimed, and the songs that comprise that pool have all earned less than $3.
Okay, so let me play devil's advocate and say,
Sure.
Why would anybody take the time to fill out a form and collect their $2.68?
Well, it's a conversation I have on a weekly basis.
Well, let's have it here.
And here's why:
Yeah.
because I have at Penn Music Group, we have a small recording studio, and anyone who's one of our clients can use the studio for free. Most of them are independent artists or work with independent artists, so they come into our place, and I have kind of been doing my own unofficial not marketing survey, but just, survey of anytime there's someone in my recording studio, I go in, I introduce myself, and my first question is, do you have things out on release on Spotify? Because there are lots of streaming services, but I feel like for better or for worse, and we are going to talk about Spotify at the end here, because they are not our friend right now, is that, I focus on Spotify. Do you have things out on Spotify
Which
as an artist?
Everybody does.
And everybody does, so they say yes, and I ask them if they've heard of the MLC, and 8 out of 10 say no.
Right, and the other 2 are lying.
Well, I do take them at their word, but...
If I didn't know you, I wouldn't know.
But, it's what's, I guess, hard for me to articulate, and we're going to try to do our best here, for all of you that are kindly tuning in and engaging here in the chat, is that I want you to think about this. Let's say you put out a 10-song record, and your record in my example is one of those in this pool of tens of millions of dollars.
Okay.
You have 10 songs that have earned less than $3, and that means you're entitled to $30. Again, we'll keep the math simple. And you don't feel that that is worth your effort to go through the process of signing up to be a member of the MLC, to register your songs and collect that money. If you take that view and your view gets replicated by so many of your fellow independent artists,
hundreds of thousands or potentially a few million.
So
yeah.
Let's talk about this tens of millions of dollars made up by all these small number of streams of each song.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the MMA when it created the MLC is that in the law, like we talk about in the book, there is a concept of black box income.
Okay.
That is in the music business, which means if there's income that remains unclaimed and uncollected after a certain period of time, and it can vary by number of years in the country, that money will get distributed to all of the local members of that society based on their market share. So whoever gets paid the most money is going to get the greatest share of this black box income. And it's money that they don't have to pay to anybody. It's a gift.
Right.
But it's a gift only because whoever should have claimed the money never has. Either because someone knew about the responsibility and knowingly didn't claim it, or they just didn't know that that's the way the business worked and they never claimed it. So when the MMA established the MLC, there is similar what is called market share distribution language in the MLC bylaws, which technically at the moment say that after 3 years, if things are not claimed properly, the money should get distributed via market share, which means that the major publishers, Sony, Warner, Universal, and then depending on how you want to define major, would involve BMG, Concord, and Cobalt, they are going to get the majority of the money.
And do they distribute it out to
here's the good news, is that in the bylaws of the MLC, any market share distribution that happens, 50% of the money that any publisher gets paid as part of this market share has to be paid to songwriters.
Okay.
Right? Because in a mechanical, half is publisher's share, half is writer's share. Right?
Yeah.
But the writer's share always follows the publisher's share in mechanicals. Performance is the only income type where they're split and they're paid separately. Every other income type, and since we're talking about mechanicals today, writer's share moves with publisher's share. So when a market share distribution happens, and there has not been one yet.
When will the first be?
It's possible it could be 2025. But we are all, everyone in the industry ecosystem is trying to argue to push out the first market share distribution to as far as possible, because we just want the opportunity for every songwriter and publisher to be paid rightfully what they should get paid.
Yeah.
That's why we're doing this today, because I'm passionate as the chair of my Unclaimed Royalties Committee that every single independent artist that has released material, any taxi member who has released material, deserves to get paid.
Yeah.
Maybe this isn't maybe music isn't your full-time job.
Which is the case for most people.
But I can't stress enough how difficult it is to make a living in music right now. I think one of your listeners will agree.
I'm pretty sure they know.
So, we owe it to ourselves and future generations of songwriters, producers, and musicians and artists to make sure that we redefine the ecosystem that is the music business so that everyone gets paid rightfully for what they create. Because otherwise we could get to a point where no one's going to create anymore because there's no incentive to create other than your own vanity and ego to put out your own music.
I have never met a musician that had vanity or ego, so can't rely on that. I have an idea, and this is totally going to blindside Michael. He's going to go, why did you say it? Maybe
no.
Won't.
Bring it on.
You know what? AI wasn't part of the conversation to any great degree when the MLC was formed, and
Very true.
and the government, in its infinite wisdom, became a bipartisan issue, and the bill got passed, and the MLC was created. Blah 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 blah. I propose. Everybody's scared to death of AI, and I can find valid arguments going both ways. The truth is, none of us know how it's going to end up. And for those who are, screaming the sky is falling, maybe something tomorrow will change all that, or maybe something will change it the other way. We just don't really know. But people are saying, we need to form a union. People won't, because people just won't get around to it. Just like X number of people don't vote, even though they have strong political opinions. When it comes to walking outside their house in a little bit of rain to go vote, they won't.
Right.
And so I say that rather than distributing that unclaimed money to the biggest shareholder, to the people who have the biggest share of the publishing, why don't they take that unclaimed money and use it all to lobby Congress on behalf of independent artists, forget independent, all artists, to make sure, because we don't have SAG or AFTRA. Musicians don't. The musicians union is not the right union to fight this battle,
True.
nor is it big enough or well-moneyed enough. Maybe that money, rather than getting distributed out to the major publishers and ultimately to their biggest writers of hits, maybe they should distribute it to an entity that fights for musicians' rights in the face of AI.
And look, not a bad idea. I think it would have to take industry consensus to get to some point like that. That's not the way the law is written.
I know, but maybe the law needs to be rewritten. And
well, we achieved a miracle, first of all, that in getting it all to the point where we're at right now anyway.
Yeah.
And without going down too many other rabbit holes, there's a very big push now via Sound Exchange and record labels to get artists paid for terrestrial radio.
Right.
Because digital radio, they get paid via Sound Exchange, which we can talk about more at the end. But for terrestrial radio, the over-the-air radios, we're in LA right now, for those of you, right? So Coast 103, K-Rock, all the big LA market radio stations, songwriters and publishers have been getting paid since the beginning of time for any songs played on those stations, but the artists and the owners of the masters are not.
Right.
Because it was always for promotion. So there is a general feeling that even though there are a number of bills in Congress to correct this, and our songwriting and publishing community certainly support those efforts, but we want to support those efforts without having our income stream, which we're already fighting to maintain, be decreased, because they feel they need to funnel money over there to pay terrestrial radio. So,
which is kind of ironic, because terrestrial radio is shrinking.
Totally agree.
So basically, we're trying to get money from something that's going to be dead in X number of years anyway. But
which, again, I'm not a politician. We'll see how much we can get Congress to focus on that sort of thing. We don't know if the Copyright Office in particular is really focusing on AI, and doing a lot of field studies and roundtables and discussions, and they will, I'm sure, see the results of all of their roundtables and research and discussions in the near future as to how they want to sort of handle it. And again, we could go down the AI rabbit hole maybe at the end, but from a practical point for the MLC for today, what I want to instill to everyone listening is any of you that are your own publisher, you are entitled to join the MLC for free. You go to the MLC.com. They have a really incredibly well laid out website that they focus highly on education. You'll find them on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. I mean, they have done a phenomenal job of spreading the word of what the MLC is. But as wonderful as their efforts have been, we're not reaching everyone because of my own little market, survey of 8 out of 10 in my little studio in Studio City, California, don't know what the MLC is. So we still have a ways to go.
Do they have a marketing budget?
They do, and they do a great job of deploying it. They go to festivals, they do tons of webinar. No, I mean,
know what they don't
they take
go
out
to?
ads. What do they not go to?
The Taxi Road Rally.
You know what? I will
we should
personally
get them-
change that.
We should get them a booth this year, and I will
That is a fabulous idea.
putting you on stage in the Grand Ballroom to do an MLC presentation. You can bring whoever you want, but the word should get out.
100%.
And our people are the most active independent musicians that you'll find anywhere.
Thank you. And I will guarantee you, Ellen Truly, who is the head of marketing and PR for the MLC, will love that idea. So I feel I can speak on behalf of Ellen that she will say they will happy to be part of the Taxi Road Rally this year.
Awesome.
I just want all of you listening to know, the ones that can join the MLC are the parties that are entitled to collect that mechanical. So if you're a publisher yourself, then that means you're entitled to be paid the mechanical. You can join the MLC, sign up, and register all your songs.
Yeah.
However, what I want to point out, though, that is important, many of you listening are probably have opted into the publishing administration agreement that's offered through your distributor.
CDBaby.
So CDBaby and
TuneCore.
TuneCore are the two most obvious ones, and I think most prevalent.
And I want to say, by the way, I say this all the time because people sign those deals, they check the box, agree to have them admin or publish their material, then submit the same stuff to go to music libraries, and libraries are like, dude, you are already published. So TuneCore, CDBaby are doing nothing untoward, illegal, unreputable. But if you don't pay attention to your dot your I's and cross your T's, and you check that box, you can't have two publishers unless they agree to be co-publishers, which they won't for a music library and
that is
TuneCore.
True for sure. So I will echo that in that, we'll focus on CDBaby, which is powered ultimately by Songtrust,
right?
Which is a copyright administration company that is owned by Downtown Music Services. And then TuneCore is now powered by Centric Music,
right?
SENTRIC, because TuneCore and Centric, which ultimately is a London-based publishing company, are all owned by Believe, which is a French company. Why I'm wanting to make this distinction to those of you that are listening is that if you signed up for that publishing administration agreement, that means you cannot become a member of the MLC because you are not the party entitled to collect the mechanical. It is Songtrust / CDBaby or TuneCore that is now the entitled party because you signed that admin deal by checking that box.
And I made a little note, music libraries. Now, you assign a piece of music to a music library. They become your publisher. Mm-hmm. They may very well have a deal with TuneCore, CDBaby,
they might.
or put it out directly on Spotify. I do see a lot of taxi member music that is out on Spotify vis-a-vis a publisher. So once again, they need to sign up for the MLC and get that money. You can't because you would be duplicating an effort and
correct
erroneously.
Now there's another distinction to be made. If you go to the MLC.com, you will see in the right-hand corner, I think it is a yellow tab, and it says Public Search.
Okay.
So the great thing about the MLC, much like ASCAP, BMI, and SESAC, all who have public-facing databases, is that you can search in the public without being a member of the MLC. You can search on song title, songwriter, and I believe even recording artist. You may not in the public search. Actually, I think you can. But it's easy to verify. It's a very well laid out search mechanism. So whether you're an MLC member or not, you can search to see if you can find your own works registered if there's another party, i.e. Songtrust, CDBaby, Centric, TuneCore, that is entitled to register. You could search, and if you can't find it with your name, any of your songs, you need to contact them and make sure that they register them,
okay.
right? So, but let's say many of you listening you aren't in that sort of a deal with CDBaby, Centric, TuneCore, Songtrust, whatever. You therefore are the party entitled to become an MLC member. It's very easy to apply online, totally free. Once you are a member and they set you up, you get to log in, and they have two separate search portals that can only be accessed once you are a member.
Okay.
And that's done for everybody's protection, because they need to verify first that you're the entitled party to be paid the mechanical. And then once you've gone through... Well, here's why, and this is another important distinction between what's happening with all the hundreds of millions of dollars that's not being claimed.
Okay.
They fall into two buckets. There's an unmatched bucket, and then there's an unclaimed bucket. The unmatched bucket is recording data that has not had the match being made between the ISRC and the ISWC that we talked about before. That's the first important match that has to happen before you can figure out who to pay. So anything that is in the unmatched portal is data that no one knows who to pay yet, because no one has gone in to match it. And there's incredibly well-known songs that from some service or another has not yet been matched. So it's incumbent upon all publishers, no matter the size, to go in and search that unmatched to claim money that it hasn't yet been paid out. But then once the match has been made, if there's more than one songwriter or more than one publisher, but they all haven't come in to put their claim on the work, then that money, it's matched, but it's the full 100% share is not yet claimed.
So if you've got 6 writers on the song, which is not uncommon on a pop hit or a pop R&B hit or a hip hop hit today, multiple writers, and one of them is outstanding and their publisher has not taken that step, does that keep everybody else from getting their share?
No, it does not.
Okay, that's good.
Anyone who goes in and asserts their claim, especially if they're one of the first ones. So like in your example, right, there's a certain amount of trust in that when you become a member of the MLC and get access to this data, there are safeguards in place where you are assured you are abiding to almost like a code of conduct once you are a member and being given access to this data, which you are then able to make claims against, which means you'll get paid money. If they find you are a bad actor and you end up claiming things that you weren't entitled to claim, you'll be booted out.
Wow.
So there's a certain...
And they have a legal right to do that.
They do, because the legal existence for the MLC is to make sure that the appropriate parties get paid what they should. So you have to allow people into the ecosystem to claim, otherwise no one's going to get paid. So you had to establish guidelines and conduct, so that you're being given access to this data. If you break it's like any of us in society, right?
Yeah.
We all have laws. If we...
But will they be enforced? Not much lately. But
well, the idea is, if all of us, there's a phrase on the MLC website called "play your part." Well, everyone's part in this is that if you are entitled to become a member, register your shares, make your claims. That's the part you need to play. Otherwise, money that would be yours might not ever come to you. So you can go in and search both of those portals, claim any of the money. They have a whole matching team. They don't assume, like once you make a match, they don't assume you're correct. They have a whole team that verifies matches before they consider it an approved match.
Where is the MLC physically located?
Physically, it's in Nashville.
Okay.
But they also have, like anyone today operating out of the post-pandemic world, there are people in person at the Nashville office, and then
very close to that.
So sorry. And then there are remote workers, and they have some people here and even in LA, and there's no LA office, and they're working remote.
So they're staffed up enough to do this, because it sounds like a Herculean task.
Now you sort of went down the AI rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
A little bit ago. The MLC, number one, we're all human. Nothing is perfect, right? So some matches that are being made are not correct. Maybe the MLC inherited matches from the Harry Fox Agency when they came into existence, because the Harry Fox Agency is the approved vendor for the MLC in managing their database.
Wow.
So one of the first things that happened is matches that the Harry Fox Agency had made got carried over to the MLC. Well, let's say a match was wrong. Like you said, "She Loves You" earlier, and I know you well enough to know that you were talking about the Beatles song.
Right.
But there are probably 500 songs around the world called "She Loves You." They all have different writers. And, if you, the Michael Laskow band, covered "She Loves You" and you uploaded it to CDBaby, you have each track, you have to fill out certain information about the track, right? You upload the track, you put in the master label owner, the year of release, blah, blah, blah. But one of the things they're going to ask you for is the songwriters of the song that is called "She Loves You." Well, if you do your job right as the Michael Laskow band, you're going to list John Lennon, Paul McCartney.
Right.
Right? Well, but a lot of independent artists who don't know what they're doing think, "Oh, I'm the artist, I should put myself in there as the songwriter."
Right.
But it's really a Lennon-McCartney. But that data that everyone uploads gets put into the database of the streaming service, and now that data is going to the MLC. So,
garbage in, garbage out.
It's 100% true. So part of the struggle and challenge of everyone who works at the MLC and those of us who are engaging with the MLC to get paid all that we should, we are victims, in a sense, to the data that gets uploaded at the point of entry into the ecosystem.
And by the way, you don't work for the MLC.
I am a volunteer. I am not paid by the MLC. I'm not salaried. I have my own company. But I have volunteered to be on this Unclaimed Royalties Committee, as have all of the board members of the MLC, because there's an overall board and there's 3 committees that sit under the board. My committee, Unclaimed Royalties, there's dispute resolutions, and then there's operations.
You are so active.
They are all run by volunteers.
I've got to give you a compliment, because I know how incredibly active you are in several organizations that I read in the beginning of today's show, and you don't get paid for any of that stuff, but
No.
you take it on voraciously. You don't just show up 4 times a year for a quarterly meeting and go to the annual holiday dinner. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
You
I
don't get
appreciate
paid
it.
for any of this stuff, and frankly, you do it for the benefit of the whole industry, because.
But yes, but I'm trying to live what I preach, because I love what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I came to LA in 1989 to be a songwriter and a film composer.
Where'd you come from?
Well, I kind of lived all over the East Coast, but I graduated from Cornell in upstate New York, where I was a music major and a minor in business management, and just came straight out here. And obviously, I abandoned that songwriting and composing career to be a publisher. But, kind of like when I was at Cornell, being an unofficial minor in business management, there was a part of my brain that, as much as I love being creative, even though I do next to none of being creative in the traditional sense of when I started, there was a part of my brain that loves the business side. And, literally my business, any publisher's business, would not exist without a songwriter. It all starts with the song.
Absolutely.
So, I am just as worried about the future of our business as anyone else. Mm-hmm. I've been doing what I've been doing for almost 35 years. I'm not done yet. I still have many years left in me to kick. It's a critical time right now. But in a way, you're right. I'm not getting directly paid, but I feel like as long as everyone out there understands how it works and can do what they're doing, that benefits every songwriter. And I'm heavily involved also with, you were talking about earlier about unions. We don't, in music, we don't have a union. Well, there is a group that started here in Los Angeles. They now have other chapters called SONA, Songwriters of North America.
Right.
And if there is probably any organization that could ever put in the effort to get to that point of a union for songwriters, it will be SONA. because it is wearesona.com. Also on all the various socials. I encourage everyone here to check it out. Full disclosure, I'm on their advisory board, but I don't get paid. I don't get paid by them. but so much of what's happening in our business now is advocacy. Everyone needs to understand what is happening and how you get paid.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know that, you're going to leave money on the table that'll go into somebody else's account other than yours. And maybe you have another job and you don't care, but it's that attitude that's going to bleed over into the next Taylor Swift who's coming up that none of us know who they are, who's 6 or 7 or 8 years old right now. And if we don't make sure that there's a business for them when they get to that point where they can become that kind of an influential artist, we're doing them a disservice. So we all need to, it's why you do TAXITV.
It troubles me, though. It really deeply troubles me because I have dedicated so much of my personal time and Taxi's time for free to educate musicians. We do the Road Rally for free. We do TAXITV for free. Do I spend a lot of weekends spending hours getting ready for a TAXITV? Absolutely. We do it because we feel like we want to help the community of musicians be able to not just make great music, but monetize it the best they can and know how to navigate the industry the best they can. With all the stuff we do for free to educate, the vast majority of our members don't come to the Road Rally, don't watch TAXITV, don't read the newsletter. And honestly, I've read a letter from a music library online several times where the library said, I thank you for sending the music. It was great. From a quality of music standpoint, great. I reached out to 17 of your members to offer them deals, and the majority of them screwed up just sending me the music in the right format, the right digital format, or filling out the paperwork. And I send them an instruction sheet, which anybody should be able to follow. So I'm disheartened by the fact musicians, help yourselves. Mm-hmm. Don't always wait around for other people to help you. There are people out there helping you, but we can't fill out the forms for you. We can't make the digital copies and get them in the right format for you. Earlier you said something about it's a scary time for musicians or something to that effect. I say there's never been a better time for musicians, especially independent artists and songwriters and composers. However, it used to be that you could just write 3 great songs, have a good look, and the ability to get 200 people out to your show, and you could get signed by a major label. Nowadays, you could have a 6-figure income by doing it all yourself as an independent artist, but you have to actually work for it.
Yeah.
There's stuff you got to do, forms you got to fill out. You got to manage your social media and not just put up 1 post a week of here I am with my new axe,
Right. Look, I couldn't agree with you more. So my statement and the statement you just make are not mutually exclusive.
Right.
I 100% agree. This is one of the best times in the history of music because you and I could sit in on the Michael Laskow band.
Yeah.
We could write a great tune, put it up on YouTube, and it could explode, or we could put it up on TikTok and it could go viral, and within a month you and I are like riding high. There are a number of artists that's happening for them right now.
Yeah.
But I also know, I think it's all about knowing your business. And we can go down a TikTok rabbit hole because there's lots of stuff going on in the news about TikTok. But we are going to talk about Spotify in a bit, so I want to keep watching the time. We're at 5 o'clock. When do we end?
5:30.
5:30, okay.
We can go 5 or 10 minutes long,
Okay. Well, and I also want to try to,
do
some of the questions. And I noticed as Michael and I were just talking, and yes, we're both Michaels, so he'll be Laskow, I'll be Eames. But Marion Laird asked a question, which is, do I need to be registered as a publisher with my PRO in order to collect mechanicals at the MLC?
That's a good question.
And it is a good question. So, Marion, great question. The answer is no, you don't. However, because performance and mechanical are totally separate, I would highly recommend that every one of you that are listening, I think Marion, I'm going to infer from Marion's question that she knows that there are two memberships at a performing rights society. There's the writer membership, there's a separate publisher membership. Most of the societies will tell you, oh, you don't need to join our PRO as a publisher. You can only join, you can just join as a writer, and we will pay you your publisher share through your writer account. And I think that's a crock of crap. That yes, it is possible, but so much of my business and Taxi's business is focused on film and TV and music libraries. And when you get a piece of music used in a television show or in a film or in a commercial, a thing called a music cue sheet is generated, and it lists the chronological listing of all the music, and there's a column for the publisher and there's a column for the writer. And if you put your name in the publisher column, in today's world, like you all who are members of these societies will know that you're getting assigned a code, what's called an IPI code. We have more acronyms in music than any business on the planet.
I believe that.
But, the IPI code identifies you. And as things become more digital, even Netflix now, when they license things, they're actually asking for everyone's IPI numbers to put on the cue sheet. So we're getting to a point where all of these, what are called identifiers, are critically important. So I don't feel that if you are serious about doing your music, when you register at a PRO, register as a writer, register as a publisher. Set up a name, you get cleared to have the name. It goes through a worldwide database. No one else will have the name of your company.
But it begs the question that people ask me all the time since the dawn of time with Taxi, which is, do I need to set up a publishing company, which they think they need to set up an LLC. They need
you
to do
don't.
a DBA. They think they need to run an ad in the local newspaper, blah, 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 blah. They just need to know where to send the money. So I could fill that out and say Michael Laskow is the composer, Michael Laskow Music is the publisher, and they will cut a check that says Michael Laskow Music on it. Right.
Or you can actually instruct them to make it payable just to Michael Laskow, because you're totally right. It does not mean you have to set up an actual legal company or an LLC or a partnership or any of that. You don't have to.
Right.
It essentially, though, is a DBA of you as an individual.
Because you're acting as such.
Because, and they will use your social security number for that publishing company name. And you can set up a DBA so that you can have a check be made out to Michael Laskow Music.
Right.
But that's only if you plan on doing business and to be paid in the name of Michael Laskow Music is when you set up that official legal DBA. But you can instruct ASCAP, BMI, whomever. You can set up the company name, but when they pay you, they can just pay you as the individual name. They don't have to make it in the name of the company name. So coming back to Marion's
question I've gotten for years.
Yeah, and Marion, to your question too, those though they're separate, you would sign up at the MLC as a publisher, the same name, by the way, as you set up under your PRO, and again, instruct the MLC to pay you as an individual under your tax ID. You don't need to set up a company. You only need to set up a company once you start to blow up and you start to make money. Right. And then you have tax reasons to do it and liability reasons so that if someone sues you, you don't lose your shirt or your house or your
Right, but if you're making
whatever.
$5,000 a year doing music for TV on the side...
You don't need to.
Right.
For sure. So let me think here. So what... let's see. All right, here's what I'm going to say real quick, and then maybe you can start looking for some questions.
Yeah.
Is what, is some of you, by the way, I've been looking, right? Some of you might need to repeat some of your questions because we just have a running chat.
I'll write some down. If you could put the word question in all caps, it makes them pop out a little bit.
There you go. That's
more
perfect.
For me.
So one thing I really want to stress to everybody right now, because if you Google this controversy, you will find a lot going on about it. And that is, I said earlier, Spotify is not our friend. So what I'm going to try to highlight very quickly here, and again, ask any questions, is the interactive streaming rates that we enjoy right now, and that's these mechanicals. That's the subject of our chat today. Those rates are set in 5-year increments by a set of 3 judges in D.C. called the Copyright Royalty Board. That's a rabbit hole we won't go down. But the current 5-year period that we're in started in January of 2023 and will go through the end of December 2027. Now, the 5-year set of rates that existed from 2018 to 2022, I won't go into the nitty-gritty, but when it was decided in 2017 what the new rates were going to be, Spotify challenged them. They appealed them. And it triggered an unprecedented legal appeal that did not get solved until 2023. Okay. So for most of the period of 2018 through 2022, all of you who were getting paid, we were getting paid at our 2017 rate because there was no legal rate because Spotify had appealed it. It took so long for the appeal.
Right.
But once the appeal got decided last year, the rates that were granted to us in the beginning of 2018 were all affirmed. Some things were changed when it comes to bundling, and the bundling is going to become relevant in a second. But here's the weird thing, right, is that while the rates were being appealed from 2018 to 2022, the rates were officially put into place for the current period we're in now, 23 to 27. Those rates were officially determined before the rates that were appealed finally got resolved, right? So we're now in a period where the MLC is going back to retroactively pay all of us for the difference between what we should have gotten paid and what we were paid at the lower rate.
How long is that?
It's going to take most of the rest of this year to get it all sort of sorted. However, so there were some of the things that we lost in the appeal related to bundling. Now let's flash forward to 2023 to 2027 where we are now. Mm-hmm. We have nice, healthy rates, but bundling is part of that rate. And bundling, for all of you that know, is like, it's like anything where we go out and we buy something. You could put one price and you can get multiple things like with it for the same price. Mm-hmm. So, when Spotify, Apple Music, all these sort of services might enter into a marketing deal with some company where they're bundling in their service. So they're getting a piece of whatever subscription money is being paid to the brand, but since you're getting a Spotify subscription as part of it, they're getting a portion of that money, and it ends up where we're getting paid a rate that's less. And in some respects, that's not such a bad thing. But what Spotify has just announced is that they have announced that all of their premium tiers. So premium right now is what, $19.99, I think. I forget what it's been raised to.
Just $10 is the basic, I think, or $9.95 is basic, and then
the basic premium, because there's a free version, right? Too. The free version of Spotify pays the lowest rate of any rate on Spotify, and then the premium version pays the highest rate. Well, what Spotify just announced is that they decided that all of their premium subscription rates, which all was going to us as songwriters and publishers, they've decided that, actually all of our premium subscriptions are now considered bundles because we're bundling them with audiobooks.
Wow.
And therefore they are cutting the amount of the premium subscription that is being allotted to music because they're saying that this other portion needs to go to audiobooks. And if you were to go on Spotify right now and try to look for any language that talks about this bundling, it's really hard to find. But there have been studies in the last couple of weeks, because this literally is happening as we speak, is that there is an estimate that this change of bundling is going to take away $150 million out of the pool that we all get paid.
Because everybody's getting paid so much as it is right now.
Right?
Anyway.
So
why is
Spotify is not our friend. They are trying to come up and have started with the appeal that they did back in 2018 to pay. They want to pay songwriters and publishers the least amount of money possible, and they're doing it again now through this audiobooks.
They do keep boosting what the labels are getting paid, do they not? The labels
that is an independent deal that they have with the labels, and P.S. most of the major labels still have stock in Spotify.
Yeah.
And the same week that Spotify announced this audiobook bull crap is the same week that Daniel Ek sold some of his stock and made like $110 million. And the same week that he was, they're basically telling us they're going to take away $150 million from songwriters and publishers, is the same week that Daniel Ek took $110 million off the table for himself. It's bullshit.
And they're a monopoly, a de facto monopoly.
Because the majority of streaming is still with Spotify.
Yeah.
So however, let's handle some questions.
Sure. I've got some.
But I wanted to throw that out there.
Here, let me start with these guys.
Yeah.
They were first on the block.
Okay.
Casey Hurwitz wants to know, how about songs in multiple non-exclusive retitled libraries? Do they have any relevance in the MLC world?
Well, if they're being released, yes. I mean...
But can a retitled library... If I do a song, She Loves You, and then there's She Loves Me, I Love Her, all these derivative retitled versions in 5 different libraries. Can they all run their library's content or catalogs through Spotify?
If they're putting them up on streaming services, then yes, every single one of those derivative works is entitled to be paid.
Okay.
But that becomes a separate rabbit hole, not related to the MLC. I have strong feelings on, and I know a bunch of people in the film and TV music space have strong feelings on retitling and non-exclusive, and that's
a whole other show.
It's a whole other show.
I'm going to have you interview Daniel Ek at the road. How cool would that be?
I'd be happy to do that, but he'll never show up.
Oh, man. Okay. Somebody from Australia, I believe, said, can foreigners, in so many words, I'm paraphrasing here, can foreigners sign up for the MLC?
Yes.
Okay.
The only thing I would say, though, since they're Australian, if you're an Australian citizen and if you're a member of APRA and AMCOS, which is the Australian Mechanical Society, then you are not the entitled party to collect the mechanical, so you couldn't join because AMCOS is a direct member of the MLC.
Will AMCOS collect money on my behalf if I'm Mr. Australian songwriter and I've signed with AMCOS, and who gets the money? Does AMCOS get the money?
AMCOS, for anyone who is not with a publisher and has given any Australian who is a publisher member of APRA and AMCOS and they're not with any other publisher, AMCOS can absolutely go to the MLC and make a claim to the mechanicals, and the MLC is paying AMCOS and AMCOS pays you.
Okay.
So depends on whether you're a member, but if this question is from someone who's not a member of APRA and AMCOS, but they're an Australian citizen and live here, well, then they're still entitled to become a direct member of the MLC and get paid directly here in the U.S. because no one else is doing it for them.
They didn't specify, but I got the impression that they're living in Australia. Somebody asked, what is blockchain? I'm going to do 15 seconds on blockchain because that's an hour and a half show easily. I am not an expert on blockchain, but I understand the basics of it. Blockchain, right now you keep a ledger, basically a piece of paper that says this is how much money came in, this is how much money came out, these are my assets, blah, blah, blah. It's a list. Blockchain is a distributed ledger, meaning that the information gets distributed to hundreds, thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands or millions of computers all over the world, so that the ledger can never be lost, stolen, or modified without the person who has the password to get into it. It's such a rabbit hole that I don't even want to go into it. But I understand enough to understand that there are some things that blockchain can do very effectively, and that AI combined with blockchain, at least my minimal understanding of the two things working in concert, could solve a lot of these problems. I personally worry because everybody says, oh, Bitcoin, not hackable, but yet it's been hacked and people have had millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin sucked out of their accounts. So Who knows? But you know what? There's this new thing called Google. If you Google blockchain, you'll get a better explanation from Google.
And all I'll say on top of that, not about blockchain, but since you mentioned AI and the MLC, which is today's topic, is the MLC is going the extra length of employing additional companies and technologies that you could go to their press release section, because I want to say it was maybe 4 or 5 months ago, where they announced that they have entered into agreements with 5 different companies from around the world to just help them verify the matches that have been made, because there are some matches that are wrong. I can go in and find in my own catalog that a match was made. I don't know who made the match, but we know it's wrong. So we're letting the MLC know this is not our song. So stop paying us on it. Right?
Basically, AI could perform any function like that requires a room full of people.
AI is at one level scary as crap, and at the same level incredibly useful.
Yeah.
So MLC and the music business is trying to use AI in a way that's productive, but we also, don't want to turn it into the Terminator-esque situation where AI is going to start creating all music that's ever going to be used ever again, because we'll all be out of jobs.
Yeah. One thing I do want to say, one quick thing about AI, and like I said, nobody can really prognosticate today where it's going to be 6 months or a year or 5 years from now. However, I know people, Carrie at NBC, what's her name?
Carrie Druten.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
She's head of all things music at NBC, the network. So
Marianne Good is the new head, but Carrie is absolutely one of the best music supervisors that NBC has. They have a bunch of them.
Do you know she used to have that office right on the other side of this wall? I'd let her use it.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, she's a friend of mine. I'd let her use that office.
She's the new head of all things music at NBC.
Well, I'm going to have to rekindle that friendship. So anyway, they are not going to take a piece of music which has a questionable copyright. Like NBC has a policy of not taking non-exclusive stuff because there are potential problems there. I can't imagine that a major broadcast network like NBC is going to take a piece of music that was created by AI, which at the moment, and maybe forever, who knows, cannot be copyrighted because it wasn't created by a human being. So there are those things.
Yeah,
another question I got was, do I need to join Harry Fox to join the MLC?
No, you do not. You can go straight to the MLC.com and join it. You don't need Harry Fox to do it. Harry Fox offers additional services other than managing the MLC database, and you can certainly join. And I think their commission rate is 15% that Harry Fox takes, depending on what rights you give them. But they where they are very smart and helpful to everyone is that they provide like an a la carte menu. You can choose what you want Harry Fox to handle for you.
For all this, I think we answered this already about Australia, but for all non-U.S. residents, does it make sense to register with the MLC, or is it preferable to go with the Harry Fox?
Well, like I just mentioned, you could give Harry Fox the ability to register for you at the MLC. The MLC takes 0%, Harry Fox will take 15% and then pay you. So it's a question of is it worth it to you to pay 15% to Harry Fox to do the work that you could also do yourself and not have anything be deducted if you did it directly yourself with the MLC.
Okay, fair enough. Hand me your book, which I am going to give away in a few moments. We'll give this away. I'm going to keep it in my hand so I don't forget. Liz just reminded me to give the book away. Can I repeal anything given to CDBaby? I did it with my YouTube rights. Is this the same process?
Yes.
So basically what you're saying is, can I get out of that deal that I signed with CDBaby? And the answer is yes, but it's not going to happen like you fill out a form today and it happens tomorrow. I understand it does take some time.
I believe the guy, Richard, who's asking the question, I believe the initial term is a year. And then once you're past that year, it's a 30-day notice.
Oh, okay.
So you could, if you've gone past your 1 year, you could give notice tomorrow
Right.
And then they would give you what's called LOR, letter of relinquishment, at the end of the 30 days
So if I
that
were
will
gonna
say,
sign that
here,
to-
we are giving you back all of the rights in the following songs.
So if I wanted to get that piece of music in the library, I could show them the LOR and say, look,
Correct.
today is, what is today? The 13th of May. So 13th of June, I'm going to be good to go, blah, blah, blah.
Correct.
All right, a couple more questions, and we're going to do a book giveaway. How do we get them? How do we get Spotify to pay us fairly? Boycott, legal action. Well, again, this is why I said to Michael, maybe rather than that slush fund of unclaimed, unattached money should go to a fund that fights for musicians' rights in the face of AI. Look, everybody talks a good game, but if all musicians, every single musician in the world boycotted Spotify, there are going to be a bunch of 14-year-olds that have fallen in love with music recently. They're going to be using it all day long, and mommy and daddy are paying for their thing. So I don't know. I mean, legal action, great. Send me a check for $500. Everybody watch a show and let's start a fund. That ain't going to happen. So I don't know.
Well,
you gotta put your money where your mouth
Peter,
is.
your question, yes, there is a group. So the music publishing business lobby in the United States, our lobby and trade organization is called the NNPA, National Music Publishers Association. It's run by David Israelite.
Who's well respected.
Very well respected, and actually you guys are kindly hearing us talk about this stuff today. If you want to go a little bit deeper into this Spotify thing, what I would recommend you do is, because David Israelite, like Laskow here is very kind to sort of say that I can be good at explaining things, but I aspire to be as great of a public speaker as David Israelite. So I would go to musicbusinessworldwide.com, which is a music business news reporting site, and you can sign up for their newsletter. But about a week ago, if you scroll through the news items, David did a podcast with Music Business Worldwide speaking about this exact topic. And he's a fantastic speaker, so I heartily recommend that you all go to musicbusinessworldwide.com, search on NNPA or Spotify, David Israelite. You'll find the podcast, listen to it. It's a great listen.
Let's see, where are we? Corey Levine wants to know, what's the main difference between the MLC and Sound Exchange? Good question.
Excellent question. Well, the MLC is only about, as we've been talking about today, songwriting and publishing royalties on the mechanical side for interactive streaming. Sound Exchange has nothing to do with songwriters and publishers. It only has to do with master recordings, and it only has to do with non-interactive streaming. So MLC is interactive streaming on the songwriter-publisher side, Sound Exchange, non-interactive streaming only on the master side. But as they are very clearly explaining on their website, the money is split 50-50 between the owner of the master and the featured artist, or I should say the artists, because that artist side is 45% of the 50 goes to the featured artist, 5% of the 50 goes to side artists or non-featured artists. And if you're getting a lot of airplay on SiriusXM and Pandora, especially, who are the two biggest main sources of income for Sound Exchange, but it does apply to any sort of internet digital radio, like there are some musicians who are making very nice livings off of Sound Exchange alone, because you make more money on Sound Exchange than you do as a songwriter and a publisher.
Are they indie musicians like the folks that show up at the Taxi Road Rally and join Taxi? Are they baby bands that are out there doing 3 gigs a week and
But are they getting airplay on SiriusXM and Pandora? If they are, then they're making money.
Who are those people that are making a nice living? That's what I want to know.
Sorry.
I want to know, how hard do you have to work to make any of this work? Because as I've been studying all this, the ability to make a really nice living wage is out there. And frankly, it's half how good is your music and half how hard are you willing to work. But a lot of musicians have a family, a mortgage, a job, a busy life, and they can't spend 8 to 12 hours a day running a business, which is what the music business is. That's what I said earlier, which is the opportunities are out there more so than they've ever been before for independent musicians.
Totally agree.
But those of us who own a business and run a business know that basically you're married to that business, and it's a lot of work. And I don't believe that most musicians have the luxury of time or the skills or the stamina to do all that stuff. But it's nice to know that people
and to briefly answer your question, because I want to make sure we hit as many questions as we can, is
We'd have to do that in a minute and
it's
a
a
half.
niche thing, right? The people that I know that are making nice money off of Sound Exchange are not necessarily the pop and rock artists who, that world is driven so much by even traditional radio. So you go to Sirius XM or Pandora and you listen to a pop and your rock channel. Well, you've got so many huge artists that are your competition. You'll never get attention.
But if you're doing
smooth jazz or music from the wave, or any of these niche things. Well, I know a lot of guys who release records into the smooth jazz market. They're not on a record label. They're doing it themselves. But they figured out the system of, I can hire this guy to promote my radio to smooth jazz. That'll cost me X. I can do this to send a mailing, and that'll cost me Y. And then I can do this, but as long as I get to this chart position and then this many plays, I know that I'm going to break even on the money that I'm going to get back, mainly from Sound Exchange.
So that is running a business.
Yeah.
They had to do the research to find out which of those companies are reputable and effective.
True.
Wow. All right.
Yeah,
good
so
to
it
know.
is possible. What else do we got?
We've got to give away the book and sign off. Spotify, we did that one already. Are you suggesting not including Spotify?
When you distribute something? I mean, look, I'm going to say no, I'm not suggesting that. The reality still is Spotify is the leader in streaming, full stop.
Big time. And
unless you're an artist of stature, you withdrawing your own music from Spotify, frankly, has no impact on them whatsoever. That's why the Taylor Swifts of the world, when they can wield their leverage, they will, and they get results. Which very quickly, though, I don't think anyone has asked this, but I think it's important to bring up about Spotify. Some of you may have heard that at the beginning of this year, that Spotify announced a new practice where things that stream less than 1,000 streams are not going to get paid a dime.
Right.
So,
but where's that money going to go?
Well, all of this in the world of streaming is pools of money.
Right.
And we've talked about AI and all of this, and there is a certain feeling that things that stream less than 1,000 might be AI generated music or fake artists or this sort of thing. That if they're not streaming very much, we don't feel that they're entitled to be paid, and we're taking money away from legit artists. So this is a arbitrary line we're going to draw in the sand. But I want everyone to know here that practice of not paying on 1,000 streams or less only applies to the master side. You will still get paid on the songwriting and publishing side through the MLC.
Yay. That's good to know.
I just want to make...
I don't buy that argument that, it's a safe assumption that something that streams under 1,000 times is AI or some BS piece of music. I think there are plenty of independent artists out there who have music that goes out to Spotify through a digital distributor, but they don't have any marketing skills. They don't have any social media skills. They don't know how to create the magic formula that gets you attention.
Sure.
On Spotify, therefore, they may only have 300 streams. And every musician in the world will say, but I've got fans in Japan, which they do, but they're not going to hit 1,000. And therefore, that money is going to go to Taylor Swift.
What I'll just throw out there for not for discussion, because we're essentially out of time, but I fear this is where we're going. In one of the areas in which we're going, which is it doesn't matter which major record label made this statement. You could probably Google it and find it. But the statement was essentially, we are all getting paid out of a static pool, which means every stream is being assigned the same value. This executive was saying, well, an Ed Sheeran stream is not worth as much as the stream of a babbling brook. because there's a whole lot of nature
Right.
sounds on Spotify. Look, I don't disagree necessarily with that statement at face value.
I would think Ed Sheeran is worth a lot more because he brings people to Spotify. They don't sign up.
I
for
know,
the
but
Babbling
where
Brook.
I'm concerned about is where a lot of these directions are going, and I'm, as an independent, I'm not a record label, nor do I plan to be. But if our major record labels are going to get traction to assign a premium to their streams are worth more than someone else's streams, then we get into like a musical caste system where, like,
Right.
if I'm an indie record label, I'm not going to have the leverage or a clout of a Universal or a Warner or a Sony. And if they can gain traction that their streams are worth more because it's a major label, that's going to penalize the vital, important indie record label and artists that, you know, maybe they are trying to get rid of the AI fake artists and blah, blah, blah. But I don't think we are necessarily served by an attitude where who gets to decide what stream is worth more than another stream. Mm-hmm. But I leave that rhetorical for now.
Wow, there's so much to talk about. This year's Road Rally, by the way, is, I believe, November 8th through the 11th. And I'm letting you guys know that normally I don't start working on the Road Rally till May 15th, just sending out the hold the date and little bits and pieces, and get really serious about it by June 15th. I'm already talking to a big-time music supervisor, a library owner, and one other person, or possibly two, rather than doing a keynote with one person this year, having a really seriously deep discussion about the future of the music industry to open this year's Road Rally.
That's cool.
It kind of breaks my heart that the stuff that fills the ballroom the most is when people have a chance at getting heard by somebody in the industry. And I understand that. It's like, this could be my big break. I'm going to get my thing played on that panel and somebody's going to hear me and say, I'll sign that, and it's going to change my life. This stuff is equally important, because if there is no industry, you can't get discovered and have your life change. So just like you guys obviously thought Michael was great on the show, which I agree. You're amazing at this.
Thank you. Kind of you.
Well, you deserve it. And I'm begging you guys, please come to this year's Road Rally, because we work so hard to bring you this level of information. You need to know it's no longer an industry where you can write 3 great songs, have a good looking face, and get 100, 200 people to your show and be discovered, get a briefcase full of money, and rides on private jets. Those days are pretty much gone. With extremely rare, I shouldn't have even said that, because you say extremely rare circumstances and everybody goes, I'm going to be that one guy.
Yeah.
And maybe you will. I don't know. Anyway, come to the Road Rally. Let's give a book away. Okay, so you guys have all met Bobby Borg on the show before. This is funny. This stuff's in yellow, but the yellow against the blue makes green, and it's confusing the green screen. This is a book that you have to have. If you think that Michael is well-informed and very articulate, Michael and Bobby Borg together are very well-informed and very articulate. So I'm going to give away a copy. If you don't win one today, I don't make a penny from recommending this book, other than I know that you guys will be smarter having it in your possession, actually reading it. So let's give them one away. And what I'd like you to do to win this book is type the letters MLC into the chat. Only one time. Please don't do multiples. And Liz is going to run her finger with her eyes shut up and down the list. And the fickle finger of fate will pick one of those, and somebody is going to win a copy of this book. I will say, please, if you're outside of the United States or Canada, it breaks my heart, but it costs way more to send the book to you than to buy the book. So,
and I'm going to personalize it to whoever
right.
wins.
Yeah, Bobby's got his
Bobby
signature.
already signed it, so I brought
right.
one that he signed.
And he put a happy face with his name, which is
well,
funny.
it's actually a drum set. And a drum set and a happy
wow,
face.
He stayed up late to learn how to do that. Check this out. Let's see if I can. Bobby Borg's drum set, happy face. That's cool. Yeah, and Michael will sign it to whoever the winner is.
All right, Liz, I feel like I should. Do you have a drum roll in your sound library?
No, I don't. I've got this drum. I've got that laugh. Speaking of laughs, have you watched the show Hacks?
Oh, I love Hacks.
I just watched the first 2 or 3 episodes of season 3 last night. It's a
Oh
very
my
good
God,
show.
it is so good. My
Gene
wife and
Smart.
I we religiously tune in.
I used to run into Gene Smart at the Ralph's at the corner of Topanga and Ventura Boulevard. Back when Deb and I lived in Woodland Hills, I would see Gene Smart maybe 3-4 times a year in that store.
Wow.
Buying her own groceries.
She's phenomenal.
Yep. Perfect laugh tracks, of course. Everyone.
I love
here.
it. Liz, pick me.
Yeah, like the claw in
Yeah.
Pick Me, Pick Me. The greatest moment any of the 3 or 4 of those. Ken Bearden wins. Yay, Ken.
All right.
Congratulations. Okay, so Michael will sign this.
Yep.
And we will send this out to you. You'll have it in your mailbox in about a week. Ken, send an email to liz@taxi.com. We've probably got your address in the database, but just to make sure that we've got the right one, send her an email. You guys, oh, by the way, I want to mention, first of all, if you have some questions about the MLC, show your interest level about the MLC in the comments below this video once it renders and is up for public display in YouTube. Because I want Michael to be able to go to his people at the MLC and say, you need to be at the road rally this year. Because I want to take...
Oh, I will email Ellen. I've invoked Ellen by name already. So
Yeah.
I'm emailing Ellen tonight to say, hey, do it. So
Yeah.
it'll happen. But, and then I don't think it's in the YouTube chat, but if Liz can also put in the link in the chat comment portion on YouTube,
Yeah, to
the
the
link
MLC.
to the MLC.com.
Absolutely, we will do that.
Because I want everyone to go and read about it. Please join. I'd love to hear that there was a spike in interest in joining after today's episode.
Absolutely. And yeah, comments would be good. So what else there? Oh, Rob Shirelli. Rob will be joining me. Like I said, he had to do jury duty, so he missed the last episode, but he will be with us 1 week from today. Start thinking about what you want to ask him. We're going to basically do a full-on question and answer episode rather than me having a specific topic. Rob Shirelli has 5 or 6 Grammy Awards as an engineer mixer. He's also produced big records for people like Will Smith, 100 gold and platinum records, and just one of the most well-informed, this level of information, audio version. So
Yeah,
that's what we're going to do.
And thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you for making time.
I'm so sorry we didn't get to all the questions. There, still some good ones. And, if you have any further questions, you can direct them here to Taxi.
Well,
he
why
can
don't they
forward them
put-
to me, or
Can they put them in the comment section under the video? And would you
Oh, sure.
go take a look at them?
Yeah.
Like just check in for 5 minutes every day
Absolutely.
and answer some?
Yeah,
Thank you.
happy to. So and please spread the word because, I don't know how many have tuned in, and I know like all the wonderful Taxi TV videos, it will get viewed many times after the fact and not just live, but please spread the word to have everyone find out what the MLC is about. It's really important. We need to make sure that everyone claims the money that's due to them because everybody benefits. So please, and thank you for tuning in.
And thank you for joining me, Michael. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
You were wonderful as always, guys. I will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live.